Before you hear this story, I want you to understand something fundamental about danger. We are taught to watch out for strangers in dark alleys, for loud threats, for the obvious barrel of a gun. But no one prepares you for the quiet kind of danger. The kind that arrives with a warm smile, a thoughtfully wrapped gift, and good intentions on the surface. My name is Scott. I am 56 years old, and I learned the hard way that the most dangerous weapon is not a pistol, but trust used against you. To understand how my life almost unraveled, we have to go back to my birthday. That Tuesday was my 56th birthday. I had no big plans. Laura, my wife, forgot the date until noon. That hurt more than I admitted to her. However, the real surprise came from Jessica. Jessica is the daughter of Laura from her first marriage. She is 32 years old, sharp as a tack, and always in a hurry. We have never been close. We have been civil but distant. That morning, seeing a gift box with my name in her handwriting felt nice. It was unexpected. Inside the box was a pair of white wireless earbuds. A note attached said she thought these might make my work at the hospital a little easier. I brought them to work the next day, feeling a small, warm surprise in my chest. I work as a facility supervisor at St. Nan's Regional Hospital. During lunch, I pulled the earbuds out to show the crew. Matt leaned over the table and asked if he could see them. Matt is about my age. He worked in the Army Signal Corps back in the day before landing in hospital maintenance. He is the kind of quiet guy who notices everything. Matt took the earbuds. He turned one over in his thick fingers, then the other. He weighed them in his palm like he was balancing gold dust. He did not smile. He did not joke about me trying to look cool. His face drained of color so fast it was like someone had pulled a plug. "Scott," he said, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Where exactly did you get these? My stepdaughter gave them to me," I said. "Why?" He swallowed hard and looked around the break room to ensure we were alone. He reached into his tool belt and pulled out a small handheld frequency scanner we use for checking interference on medical equipment. He switched it on and held it next to the earbuds lying on the table. The device instantly lit up with a solid red bar and emitted a high electronic whine. My stomach dropped. Not fear yet, just that cold sense you get when a machine makes a noise it should not make. "They are transmitting," Matt said. "But they are not connected to my phone," I said. "That is the problem," Matt replied. He pointed a grease-stained fingernail to a tiny, almost invisible scratch along the seam of the plastic casing. "Someone pried this open, Scott. The weight is wrong. The balance is off. This signal is constant. These have been modified with an independent SIM card and a microphone. This is not a gift. This is a wire." I drove home with the earbuds burning a hole in my jacket pocket. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Every instinct screamed at me to storm into the house and demand the truth. But Matt had warned me against it. "Do not let her know you know." That sentence played on a loop in my mind. I parked the car and took a deep breath to steady my shaking hands. I needed to look like the same tired facility supervisor I was yesterday. I stepped into the living room and stopped dead. Jessica was standing by the side table. She was holding my smartphone. The screen illuminated her focused face. I had left it on the charger that morning. She jumped when she saw me. Her thumb jerked away from the screen, and she placed the device back on the table a little too quickly. "Hey, Scott." She breathed out a nervous laugh. "You scared me." I stared at the phone and then at her. My throat felt tight. "What are you doing with that?" She recovered instantly. Her smile returned practiced and sweet. "Mom mentioned you were feeling a little dizzy lately. I was just downloading a blood pressure tracking app for you." It sends alerts if your vitals get too high. You know, just to be safe. The lie was smooth. It was terrifyingly casual. She was not just invading my privacy. She was already planting the seeds of her narrative. She wanted everyone to believe I was sick. I wanted to snatch the phone and throw her out of my house. Instead, I forced my facial muscles into a mask of gratitude. Thanks, Jessica. That is thoughtful of you. She lingered for a moment to gauge my reaction. When she saw nothing but a tired old man, she relaxed. I will let you rest, she said. The moment the front door clicked shut, I grabbed the phone. My fingers trembled as I dialed Matt on a secure video call. I told him what happened. Go to settings, Matt commanded. Check the location services. I navigated the menu. My stomach turned over. Hidden deep in the system services, the location sharing was active. It was set to share indefinitely with a device labeled Jess iPhone. Check messages, Matt said. Look for text forwarding. I tapped the screen. There it was. Every text message I received was automatically forwarding to her number. That included 2-factor authentication codes from my bank. That included password reset links. Matt swore softly on the other end of the line. Scott, this is not just surveillance. This is a takeover. She does not just want to hear you. She wants to be you. She has your ears. She has your location. And now she has the keys to your financial life. I stared at the device in my hand. It looked the same as it did this morning, but now it felt like a grenade with the pin pulled out. The next morning, I sat across from Detective Miller in a small interrogation room that smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. Miller was a man who looked like he had seen every variety of human cruelty and found them all boring. He did not touch the earbuds. He just stared at the report the tech guy had slid across the metal table. This is not off-the-shelf stuff, Scott, Miller said. His voice was gravel. It has a dedicated SIM card. It records audio. It streams location. It transmits even when your phone is off. Whoever set this up is not just curious. They are hunting. I gripped the edge of the table. So we arrest her. Miller shook his head slowly. No. If you confront her now, she will deny it. She will say you are paranoid. She will say she bought them secondhand and had no idea. She will destroy the laptop linked to this account, and you will be left looking like a confused old man who hates his stepdaughter. That is exactly what she wants. So what do? I asked. You act. Miller leaned forward. You put them back in your ears. You go about your day. You let her listen, but you do not give her the truth anymore. You give her a performance. Driving away from the precinct was the hardest thing I had ever done. I parked a block away from my office. I took the earbuds out of my pocket. They looked so innocent. Just smooth white plastic. I put them in my ears. The connection chime sounded soft and pleasant. It made my skin crawl. I felt like I was voluntarily letting a parasite burrow into my skull. I started the car and began my performance. I muttered to myself. Did I pay the electric bill? I said aloud. My voice sounded shaky. I think I did. Or was that last month? I cannot remember. I need to write this down. I kept it up all day. I whispered about losing keys. I complained to the empty air about numbers getting mixed up in my head. I fed the beast exactly what it wanted to hear. I was painting a portrait of a man losing his grip. Every time I spoke, I imagined Jessica somewhere safe and smug, smiling as she listened to my decline. That evening, I needed a reason to get away from Laura and her worried glances, so I went down to the basement. I told her I needed to check the furnace. The basement smelled of dust and old cardboard. I walked past the furnace to the metal filing cabinet in the corner. I wanted to see if Jessica had touched our physical records too. The bottom drawer squeaked as I pulled it open. It was usually a mess of old tax returns and appliance manuals. But right at the front, there was a new manila folder. It was crisp and clean. I opened it and felt the blood drain from my face. It was not just financial records. It was a draft for a legal petition. The bold letters at the top screamed at me. Petition for guardianship. Below that was a medical evaluation form that had already been partially filled out. It listed symptoms: memory loss, confusion, paranoia, inability to manage financial affairs. There was a sticky note on the medical form in handwriting I recognized instantly. It was Jessica. The note read simply, "Dr. Evans' visit next week. Get the signature." I stared at the paper until the words blurred. She did not just want my money. She wanted to erase me. She was building a legal cage to strip me of my rights and my voice. She wanted to declare me incompetent so she could take the wheel of my life and drive it off a cliff. 3 days later, Laura announced we were having a guest for dinner. She was nervous. She smoothed the wrinkles of the tablecloth 3 times in 10 minutes. She told me an old friend named Dr. Evans was passing through town and wanted to say hello. Her voice was too high. It was the voice of a bad liar. I went to the garage and pulled out my phone. I searched for Dr. Marcus Evans in the state medical registry. The result chilled my blood. He was not just an old friend. He was a geriatric psychiatrist specializing in cognitive decline and competency evaluations. Jessica had sent a headhunter to my dining room table. I dressed carefully for dinner. I chose a crisp button-down shirt. Before I left the bedroom, I put the white earbuds in my ears. I wanted Jessica to hear this. I wanted her to hear her trap snap shut on empty air. When I sat down at the table, I tapped the earbuds. "Sorry," I said to Dr. Evans. "I like to listen to classical music while I eat. It helps me focus." Dr. Evans smiled. It was a shark smile. He was a man in his late 50s with manicured hands and eyes that did not blink enough. "Not at all, Scott," he said. "I understand completely." The interrogation began with the appetizers. Evans did not ask about sports or the weather. He asked about timelines. He asked about details. "So, Scott," he said, "Laura tells me you have been at the hospital for a long time. When exactly did you start?" I cut my steak with surgical precision. "I started on October 14th, 1998, I said. "It was a Tuesday. It was raining. We had a boiler failure in the east wing that same afternoon. The secondary pump seized because the bearings were shot. I replaced them myself." Evans paused. He exchanged a glance with Laura. "That is a very specific memory," Evans said. "How about the current codes? Do you find it hard to keep up with new technology?" I took a sip of water. "Not really," I said. "The new HVAC efficiency standards passed in 2022 require a SEER rating of at least 14 for residential units. But commercial units like ours operate under ASHRAE standard 90.1. I just updated the compliance logs yesterday." I saw a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He was expecting a confused old man who could not remember what he had for breakfast. Instead, I was giving him a seminar on industrial engineering. For 40 minutes, I ran circles around him. I cited dates. I recalled names of elementary school teachers. I discussed the geopolitical impact of current oil prices. I was sharp. I was undeniable. Laura looked relieved. She smiled at me with genuine warmth. That was dangerous. If Laura thought I was fine, she might call off the guardianship. Jessica needed a victim, not a hero. I knew what I had to do. It made me sick, but I had to do it. Coffee was served. Evans leaned back. He was frustrated. He decided to try one last personal question. "You and Laura have a beautiful home," he said. "How long have you been married now?" This was the moment. I paused. I let my fork hover over the cake. I furrowed my brow. I let my eyes drift to the corner of the room as if I were searching for a missing file. "We have been married for 12 years, I said. "Wait. No. That is not right. It was July, no, August." I looked at Laura with practiced panic. "Honey," I said, "was it August 12th? The room went silent. Laura put her cup down. Her face crumbled. "It is June 4th, Scott," she whispered. "We celebrated it 2 months ago. You bought me lilies." I slumped in my chair. "Right?" I said. "June. Of course. I do not know why I thought it was August. My head gets so cluttered lately." Evans did not say a word, but he looked satisfied. He had his proof. "Excuse me," I said. "I need to use the restroom." I stood up and left the earbuds sitting on the white tablecloth right next to the sugar bowl. I walked down the hall and locked the bathroom door. I pulled out my phone. Matt had rigged a bypass that allowed me to listen to the stream the earbuds were broadcasting. I put the phone to my ear. I heard the clink of china. Then I heard the rustle of a phone being pulled from a pocket. "This is Evans," the voice in my ear said. There was a pause as Jessica answered on the other end. "He is sharp," Jessica Evans said. "Surprisingly sharp. But that slip at the end was significant. He masked it well during the meal, but the disorientation about the anniversary is a classic sign of early-stage cognitive decline. He is good at hiding it, but the cracks are there." I gripped the sink. I stared at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked old. But my eyes were clear. "I need one more session to be sure," Evans continued. "But I think we have enough to move forward with the preliminary filing. He is vulnerable." I turned off the phone. I flushed the toilet to keep up the charade. I had played the fool to catch the devil, and it was working. The waiting game was over. I decided it was time to stop being the mouse and start being the trap. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to see Jessica not just listening but moving. I needed to catch her hands in the dirt. I formulated a plan that was simple and irresistible to someone with her specific brand of greed. Cash. Untraceable, cold, hard cash. I drove out of the city limits toward the industrial wasteland on the edge of town. The sky was a bruised purple and the roads were slick with black ice. It was the perfect stage for a secret that needed hiding. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the white earbuds. They felt heavy in my hand, like lead weights. I put them in. The familiar electronic chime signaled that the line was open. Jessica was listening. I cleared my throat and began my performance. I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror, checking for a tail that I knew was not there yet. "I cannot trust the banks anymore," I muttered to the empty car. My voice was low and frantic. "They are watching everything. Laura asks too many questions." I paused to let the silence build the tension. I tapped the steering wheel with a nervous rhythm. $50,000, I whispered. "It is safer in cash. $50,000 in the backpack. I cannot keep it at the house. If they find it, they will take it all. I need to hide it where no one looks." I turned the steering wheel sharply onto the access road. The gravel crunched loudly under my tires. I wanted her to hear the change in terrain. I wanted her to paint a picture in her mind, of a remote location. The old warehouse, I said. The one past the bridge. It is abandoned. No cameras. No guards. It is perfect. I will put it in the back room behind the... A sharp electronic beep pierced my ear. Battery low. The mechanical voice was followed by a descending tone and then absolute dead silence. My heart slammed against my chest. No, no. I tapped the earbud frantically. Nothing. The connection was dead. The panic that washed over me was real. This was not acting. This was catastrophe. I had just told her I had $50,000 in cash, but I had not told her where I was putting it. If she missed the location, the trap was useless. Worse, she might come to the house looking for it. She might hurt Laura. I slammed on the brakes and skidded to a halt on the shoulder of the road. My hands were shaking as I ripped the glove compartment open. I threw maps and tire gauges onto the passenger seat. "Where is it?" I hissed. I found the charging cable tangled around an ice scraper. I jammed it into the case and shoved the earbuds inside. The small amber light flickered on. I stared at it, willing it to turn green. I needed to get the connection back before she stopped listening. I needed to bridge the gap in the story. I waited 2 agonizing minutes. The silence in the car was heavy enough to crush me. Finally, I pulled one earbud out and put it back in my ear. Connected. I let out a breath and immediately slipped back into character. I needed to cover the silence. I needed to make the interruption seem natural. "Stupid, cheap junk," I yelled at the dashboard. "Even the batteries are failing me. Everything is breaking." I started the car again and let the engine roar. I needed to make sure she was locked in. I decided to change the delivery method. I pretended to open the voice memo app on my phone. "Okay," I said. "Recording note to self just in case I forget. The money is in the blue backpack. I am leaving it at the warehouse on Route 9, Storage Unit 4. The lock combination is 1234. Route 9, Unit 4. Do not forget it, Scott." I stopped the car again. I sat there in the silence, listening to the wind howl outside. I had cast the line. I had baited the hook with $50,000 of imaginary money. Now all I had to do was see if the shark was hungry enough to bite. I arrived at the warehouse complex on Route 9 20 minutes after my performance in the car. It was a desolate graveyard of industry on the edge of town. The metal skeletons of abandoned storage units stood in rows like jagged teeth against the night sky. The wind howled through the gaps in the rusted corrugated steel. It was the perfect place for a secret that needed burying. I pulled my sedan behind a dense cluster of overgrown holly bushes near the perimeter fence. It was a tight squeeze, but it concealed my vehicle completely from the main gravel drive. I killed the engine. I killed. The silence rushed back in instantly, heavy and oppressive. I checked my phone. It was 10 o'clock at night. The temperature outside had dropped to 12 degrees. Snow began to fall. It was not the soft, picturesque snow of Christmas cards. It was hard, biting pellets of ice that clicked against the windshield like tiny stones. I sat in the dark and waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. My toes went numb inside my heavy work boots. The cold seeped through the floorboards and settled into my bones. Doubt is a cruel companion in the dark. I started to question everything. Maybe the signal had dropped before I gave the location. Maybe the battery really had died too soon. Maybe she was smarter than I gave her credit for, and she knew this was a trap. I checked my watch again. It was midnight. I was a 56-year-old man sitting in a freezing car in the middle of nowhere, waiting for a ghost. I felt ridiculous. I felt small. My hand reached for the ignition key. I was ready to give up and go home to my warm bed. Then I saw it. Twin beams of light cut through the falling snow. A car turned slowly off the main road onto the gravel drive. My breath caught in my throat. I lowered my head instinctively, even though the windows were tinted dark. The car moved with caution. It crept past the first row of units and stopped. The headlights died instantly, plunging the row back into darkness. It was a gray sedan, a late-model Toyota. I knew that car. I had paid for the transmission repair on that car 2 years ago. It was Jessica. She did not get out immediately. She sat there for a long time. She was scanning the area. She was checking for traps. She was checking for me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would shake the frame of the car. Finally, the driver's side door opened. Jessica stepped out into the biting wind. She was wearing a heavy black coat and a knit cap pulled low over her ears. She looked nothing like the smiling stepdaughter who brought soup to my kitchen. She looked like a predator. She held a heavy tactical flashlight in one hand and a pair of red bolt cutters in the other. I raised my phone. I had already taped over the screen light with black electrical tape to keep it dark. I activated the camera. The night mode software turned the world grainy and green, but it captured her every move with crystal clarity. She walked straight to Unit 4. She did not hesitate. She did not look at Unit 3 or Unit 5. She knew exactly where to go because I had told her. She tried the handle. It was locked. She shone the light on the padlock. She adjusted her grip on the bolt cutters. She was not here to check on me. She was not here to see if I was safe. She was here to steal. She clamped the jaws of the cutters onto the lock and bore down with all her weight. There was a sharp, metallic snap that echoed like a gunshot in the quiet night. I recorded it all. I recorded her throwing the broken lock into the snow. I recorded her sliding the heavy metal door up. I recorded her storming inside and frantically searching the empty concrete box for a backpack that did not exist. When she came out 5 minutes later, she was furious. She kicked the metal door. She screamed a word I could not hear into the wind. I did not confront her. I did not step out and scream. I kept filming until she got back in her car and sped away, kicking up gravel and snow in her wake. I waited until her taillights disappeared completely. Then I started my engine. The cold was gone. I felt nothing but the heat of victory. The fish had not just bitten the hook. She had swallowed it whole. The email arrived 2 days after the night at the warehouse. The subject line read, "Urgent next steps." Jessica wrote that we needed to meet at the bank immediately to finalize the paperwork before my memory lapsed again. She claimed she had spoken to Laura and that they both agreed it was time. It was not a request. It was a summons to my own execution. I arrived at Great Lakes Community Bank 10 minutes early. The conference room was a soulless glass box in the center of the lobby. The air conditioning was running full blast, making the room feel like a freezer. It smelled of burnt coffee and cheap laminate cleaner. It was the kind of room where people signed papers they did not understand and convinced themselves it was fine. Jessica was already there. She sat at the head of the table wearing a sharp charcoal blazer that looked like armor. A thick leather binder sat in front of her. She looked focused. She looked confident. She did not look at me with hate. She looked at me with a terrifying kind of professional pity. Laura sat next to her. My wife looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Her eyes were red and swollen. She held a crumpled tissue in her hand like a lifeline. She refused to meet my gaze. She was drowning in the narrative Jessica had written for her. She truly believed her husband was fading away. I pulled out the chair opposite them and sat down. I did not say hello. I did not take off my coat. I just folded my hands on the table and waited. Jessica wasted no time. She opened the leather binder. The sound of the heavy metal rings snapping open was loud in the quiet room. She pulled out a thick stack of documents and slid them across the polished table toward me. The paper made a dry, hissing sound against the wood. "We need to get this done today, Scott," Jessica said. Her voice was soft. It was the voice you use for a frightened toddler or a wounded animal. "Mom is worried sick. You are forgetting bills. You are confusing dates. We just want to make sure the house and the savings are safe before things get harder for you." She tapped the signature line on the bottom of the first page with a perfectly manicured fingernail. "Just sign it, Dad," she said. "It is the best thing for Mom, and it is the best thing for you. Let me carry the burden. You do not have to worry about money anymore. You can just rest. Rest." That was her word for surrender. That was her word for deletion. She looked at me expecting a confused old man to pick up the pen and sign away his existence. She had no idea she was looking at a man who had already won. I held the pen over the signature line. Jessica stopped breathing for a second. Her eyes were fixed on the tip of the ink. Then I let the pen drop. It hit the laminate table with a sharp crack that made Laura jump. "I am not signing this, Jessica," I said calmly, "and I am not losing my mind." Jessica blinked. Her professional mask slipped just a fraction. "What are you talking about?" "Just sign the paper, Dad." I looked up at the frosted glass door behind her and nodded once. The door opened immediately. Sarah Jenkins from the fraud department and Detective Miller walked in. The air in the room shifted instantly from a family meeting to a crime scene. Jessica stood up. "Who are these people?" Sarah Jenkins did not smile. She placed a stack of call logs on the table. "I am Sarah Jenkins. These are transcripts of calls made to our unauthorized access line. They were made from your cell phone number, Jessica. You claimed to be the financial proxy for Scott. You verified his social security number, which you obtained illegally. That is federal bank fraud." Jessica tried to laugh. It sounded brittle. "This is a misunderstanding. I was just helping him." Detective Miller stepped forward. He did not say a word. He simply reached into his pocket and placed the pair of white earbuds on the center of the table. They sat there like an accusation. Jessica froze. Her eyes darted from the earbuds to me. Miller then placed a small black digital recorder next to them. "We found this in your glove compartment. It records audio inside the cabin. You must have forgotten to turn it off after you called your lawyer." Miller pressed the play button. The voice that filled the room was undeniable. It was Jessica. She was laughing. The audio was crisp. "He is totally senile," she said on the recording. Her voice dripped with mockery. "The old man is ready to crack. Once I get the signature on Thursday, I am putting him in a state facility. The house will be ours in a month. Just make sure the transfer papers are ready." Laura made a sound like a wounded animal. She covered her mouth with her hand. She stared at her daughter with horror. Jessica turned red. "This is illegal. You cannot record me. This is entrapment." I stood up. I reached into the inside pocket of my coat. I had one last thing to show her. I pulled out the glossy photograph I had printed that morning. It was a high-contrast night shot. It showed a woman in a black coat cutting a padlock off a storage unit in the snow. Her face was illuminated by the flashlight. I slid the photo across the table until it rested right in front of her. "Did you find the $50,000, Jessica?" I asked. Or did you just find the empty room I sent you to? The color drained from her face completely. She looked at the photo. She looked at the earbuds. She realized the trap had not been for me. It had been for her. Laura stood up. Her voice was shaking. You were not helping him. You were robbing him. You were going to put him in a home. Jessica snapped. The mask shattered completely. She started screaming. She screamed about her debts. She screamed that I was selfish. She screamed that I had too much money for a maintenance man and she deserved a cut. She called her mother weak. She called me a liar. Miller moved fast. He spun her around and pressed her against the wall. You have the right to remain silent. The click of the handcuffs cut through her shouting. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. 2 uniformed officers entered and led her away. She was still yelling as they dragged her through the lobby. Laura collapsed into her chair, sobbing into her hands. I walked out of the bank alone. The winter air hit my face. It was biting cold, but it felt clean. I reached into my pocket one last time. I pulled out the white earbuds. I looked at them for a moment. They were just plastic and wire, but they had almost cost me everything. I tossed them into the trash can by the curb. I took a deep breath. The silence in my head was finally my own. We are taught to fear the wolf at the door, but we are rarely warned about the snake in the living room. My story is not just about betrayal. It is about the vital importance of trusting your gut when the world tells you to shut it off. You are the expert on your own life. When someone tries to rewrite your reality or question your sanity, you must pause. Silence is not weakness. It is observation. In a world full of noise and hidden agendas, your intuition is the only surveillance system you can truly trust. Protect your peace. Verify your circle. Never apologize for staying awake.